Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. We are now welcoming Victor, who is a privacy activist, researcher, and writer. He is the head of communications at IVPN and the founder of The Privacy Issue, an editorial platform. Today, he will be elaborating some spicy questions about surveillance. So let's hear Victor for more.
Hello, thanks for the intro. So, hi everyone. As Silva said, my name is Victor. I'm a privacy researcher from Hungary, and I've been a Pivik and Matomo user for close to 10 years now. So I'm really excited to be here. I would like to kick off this talk with a quote about the question of technological determinism, the question of do we have an agency over the effect of new technology? And Lynn Wright Jr. said, technology merely opens the door. It does not compel one to enter. And for this gentleman called Marvin Kranzberg said, true, we are not compelled to enter White's open door, but an open door is an invitation. Besides, who decides which doors to open? And are not our future directions guided by the chamber into which we have stepped? Equally important, once we have crossed the threshold, can we turn back? So just to give you a little bit of context about why I'm really motivated to give this talk, I've been at IVPN for 3 years now, and we've been talking and thinking and discussing the topic of privacy quite a lot internally and within communities and with customers. And the question regularly comes up, why does it matter? Why privacy matters? What is this end state that we would like to protect ourselves against? And there are many theoretical, philosophical, historical, and legal answers to this. But what I would like to explore today is if we would be living in a surveillance state, or we are headed to a surveillance state, how it would all go down. Would we notice it? And to explore this, I will talk about technological adoptions, surveillance and its relationship with power, and slippery slopes. So to get started, I would like to talk a little bit about privacy and surveillance and some definitions. There are many possible ways to define these terms, but for me, the best one for privacy is that it's the ability to selectively reveal ourselves to others. And this is universally applicable, and it depends on different contexts and relationship and the parties involved. But ultimately, it's about giving you autonomy and having agency over our own actions and thoughts, so they can be used to judge us and nudge us, and it gives us a unique character. So surveillance, for me, is a method of encroaching on that privacy, and this creates an interesting dynamic that the surveiller knows more about us than we know about them. The surveiller knows what they know, and they can define the rules of the game and the capabilities and what informations to collect. So in this sense, they have an advantage over us. So I think these methodologies have evolved way beyond the 80s movies, like people following you around in vans and rifle mics and all this kind of stuff. These capabilities have exploded. They are massive, and the actors who are doing this have their own reasons for not revealing these. So on the state side, when states doing surveillance, they usually have secret committees, secret decision making, and obfuscation, as we'll see in examples. And on the corporate side, on the corporate surveillance side, it's made available by the market, the open market, the laissez-faire approach, and lagging regulations. So why this is very important for me is I think privacy is power. That's the core of the issue for me, because if there is surveillance, that means there is a lack of privacy, and you lose that power, because information about you can be used against you, and that creates this power imbalance. And this power can be used for control in the name of national security and the interest of the people, and it can be used for profit in the name of progress and convenience. So, and this power can manifest in many different ways. And one way is the soft power, where there is maybe not a very clear way of this happening. Maybe it's just like a softer nudges and influence and giving benefits and rewards and taking away some some benefits, but on the other end of this spectrum, there's this hard power, which is taking away the freedoms and jails and camps, and it both can be exerted on citizens and customers. So, exploring soft power a little bit, the clearest example for me of this soft power on the state side is the social credit system in China. Many of you, most of you, probably heard about it, but I'm going to give you an overview. So in China, surveillance and AI is used for control, for rewards and benefits, and some, let's say, softer punishments. And it's important to note that these Chinese social credit systems, there is no centralized, like ubiquitous system where everyone is controlled everywhere and like there is one also all-seeing guy. These systems are tested in a decentralized fashion in different areas with various rules. Just to give you an overview, I'd like to show this clip. This is from a movie, a French movie, that the French friends watching the stream might have seen it, 7 Billion Suspects. And they've sourced the clip from the Chinese TV on the social credit system. This is a 1-minute clip about this introduction. So I'd like to show you this. I hope it's going to show.
山东省启动了社会信用体系建设，为所有社会成员建立政务信用档案，依据信用分数高低划分为 AAA 到 D 6个等级。我是 AA 信用等级，有什么激励措施？你可以参与评先进、评职称、发展党员，享受政策扶持优先，免抵押信用贷款。
我酒后驾驶，等级降为 B 级。
很遗憾，你不能入党，不能当村居书记，不能参选2代表1委员。
我受到行政拘留，信用等级降为 C 级。
Sorry， 一处失信，处处受限，你不能享受政府贴息贷款。
我是法院老赖，等级降至 C 级。
你将受到联合惩戒，被列入了失信黑名单，不能当兵，不能坐飞机，不能参加政府采购工程招投标，不能获得政策支持。
So feel free in Roncheng. I think that's an interesting take on this whole thing. You see, it's there's this cartoonish, easygoing introduction to this. But I would argue that this is probably not so much fun, especially for the people on this discredited backlist. Although it's important to note that to make this happen, there is a lot of things happening on the technological side. Facial recognition systems, data from different applications, payment system, banking information, police records. All this data is fed into an AI to make decisions and give this scores. And many people in China like it, as per the reports and what we know about this. There's some clear benefits. Your latte in the morning might arrive earlier, or you don't have to put down a deposit to rent a car. Great. But on the other end, the people punished by these systems are pushed out to the edges. They become pariahs. There is a small chance for rehabilitation, and there is a serious chilling effect on what you can do and how far you can push the edges of the system. And when I was researching this whole topic, I was interested in the question of how is this all possible in China. And I've encountered one concept I think is really important to describe here. It's the concept of legalism, or faji, which says that there is a cost and benefit approach to applying the laws in China. Not everyone is equal in the eye of the law. And the party and the leader decides what is good for society, and laws can be bent and applied selectively and unchallenged to be used for their end. There's not a lot of democratic input. And this is framed as like an extrapolation of the existing laws. We are doing it for you. We are doing it for the betterment of societies. And all this soft power is exerted because it's for the people. But ultimately, there's one person, and he charges to make these decisions, decide like what's a good behavior. Like we'll tell you how to behave, and you might have a chance, to decide whether you comply. But ultimately, you cannot make this choice. And I think the thinking behind this is opposite to the liberal social values that I personally would think is better for democracies and the advancement of free ideas. So after exploring this soft power part on the state side, I would like to move on to the corporate side and what's happening there. As you might know from reports and analysis over the years, like on the corporate side, these surveillance-based business models, especially by Facebook and Google, these have created enormous power and wealth for them, trillions of dollars in market capitalization. So as we move into the direction of spending more time online, especially after these COVID dynamics shaking things up, spending more time online, doing work online, meeting friends and family online, leisure time. There is more and more data generated. And now we have seen these reports coming out of the vision of Mark Zuckerberg changing the company name to Meta to build this metaverse. This part of the talk I've prepared for a couple of months now, and these news that they are renaming the company is pretty fresh, but it lines up really well with the things that I wanted to share about this. Is that these metaverses, these real world dynamics are recreated with their own boundaries and own rules, and people are going to be spending a lot more time there. And we can argue about different aspects where it's good for society and what are the downsides. But for me, this surveillance aspect is what's really interesting in this context, because so far they had the power to sell our attention and not just into ways the algorithm thinks it's best for engagement and the highest bidder, but it was kind of confined into that space. But in the metaverse, Facebook is going to own the entire stack, the hardware gateways, the payment, the commerce, social graphs, messaging. And this creates an option for this aggregated ID system. And what Mark Zuckerberg thinks about Facebook, they have to retransform it into something like the state. Because they will have to write the rules of the engagement and the behavior, and they have to kind of do some sort of police work. And to show you, like, he already thinks along these lines, because when he was asked recently about misinformation, moderation, and content policing on Facebook, he said that when you think about the integrity of a system like this, it's a little bit like fighting crime in a city. No one expects you that you're ever going to fully solve it, but the police will have to do a good enough job of helping to deter and catch the bad thing when it happens. So right now on Facebook, this is kind of like encapsulated, but in the metaverse, this is going to be much more important question. And in this context, there is no need for FAGI or legalism. There's just loose regulations and the opportunity for one person to make these kind of decisions and say who and why is rewarded, what is acceptable. And this will be a closed system aided by constant surveillance. So I just want to note here, without trying to make any pass any big judgments here, that Black Mirror series was not an operating manual. So maybe this is something that to think about for people working on this stuff. Okay, so after exploring the soft power, I would like to move on to the hard power, like the more egregious and scary violations on privacy. And the examples where surveillance is used to exert hard power on populations. We have seen this before in history. We know this from the history books. Oppressive states, authoritarian leaders, xenophobia, feeding into this. But what's happening now, and this is also something that was widely reported, and I hope you've heard about it. This is happening now in China, in the province of Xinjiang, where at least tens of thousands of Uyghurs are put into these re-education camps, which are actually concentration camps because there is evidence of violence and coercion. So they are put into these camps because of their religion, mainly, because they are not conforming with the idea of how Chinese people should behave. And they have not seen a lawyer. They were not convicted. These tens of thousands is just the confirmed numbers. Activists and researchers say it's probably in the hundreds of thousands. So all this project was carried out with the help of surveillance technology, facial recognition, monitoring of communications, behavioral data, biometric information feeding into these data points and feeding into this AI. And this system is called IGOP. And the Chinese secret police use this, and with the help of military police, they put QR codes on houses, monitor people, set up checkpoints. And this algorithm actually makes the decision of who are the subversive elements and who are pose the biggest risk, and they are sent into these camps. So this example is the most chilling example of use of surveillance technology. But I want to make the point here that this same logic applies as with the soft power. Separate the good and bad, use the data, and use these kind of AI systems and this kind of methodologies for the same purpose. So data and tech, we can say it's neutral and it's benign, but it can be introduced and scaled and tested and repurposed for more sinister ends. This actually happened in China. So to conclude this part, I would like to talk a little bit about the outsourcing of surveillance, because I've talked about this parallel of state and corporate application of these technologies. It's good to note here that they have similar motivations and they have an interest in working together. And there is big money to be made in surveillance on the private side. And some of the examples here, LexisNexis is a data broker mainly operating in the US, but in other areas as well. They have 10,000 data points on hundreds of millions of people, collecting it from different sources, location information, license plate data, and different other stuff. And this is all used by law enforcement in the US. Another example is the Clearview AI, who build these big facial recognition database systems, and they use it and they do it with the help of public and private sources. So this is the part where the data collection part is outsourced to private companies. But there's also the next step, which is the making sense of the data. And Palantir is an excellent example here. We are going to see some examples from the US and some other areas as well. Palantir is a data analytics company worth 50 billion now in US dollars, give or take. And dozens of states around the world use it. In the US, they deploy so-called fusion centers where they help with the LAPD uses this and New Orleans police uses this. They help with the comprehension and this kind of like predictive policing system. And they use the state databases and the private databases, what we've seen before, and aggregate all this data to make sense of what is happening. And it's called GADAM. That might give you an indication of what they think about the whole city and the crime there. So anyone can look up anyone in there who have access to the system. But for example, in LA, half of all the police officers have access to the system, and they look at anyone. And they've also used this like chronic offender test there, where they give like points to people in the system to identify who is likely to offend. And they also list like non-violent offenders and non-suspects and persons of interest, people who were in different areas, getting that kind of like geofenced information from them. So this is really feeds into the idea of everyone can become a suspect. So this is about the outsourcing of the surveillance. So now I've given you kind of like overview of what's happening and some of the capabilities. Just moving back to the question of the title of the talk, are we there yet? I think in some places we are definitely there. It depends on where you live and who you are. To help you determine at your place whether you are there yet, it's important to talk about the concept of slippery slopes. So the slippery slope argument is that when we take one small step in a specific direction, it can have a snowball or domino effect. It can have dire outcomes. And this question came up with the questions of Apple's deployment of client-side scanning for child exploitation images. When they scan your iPhone, if you are synced to iCloud, and check against these hashes. The technical details are more complex than I could get into in this time frame. But the point here is that privacy advocates and researchers and information security professionals warn that this whole thing can make us end up in a bad place, and it will lead to more privacy issues. It will lead to more surveillance. It will give capabilities to authoritarian governments. And a lot of people are eager to jump in, like, okay, come on, don't use the slippery slope argument. That's a fallacy, and that won't happen. If you enable iCloud, you're not going to end up in a concentration camp. That's just silly. But my argument here is that that's not what privacy advocates are saying. I think the slippery slope argument is only a fallacy if the steps following each other would not lead to the proposed outcome, and we cannot demonstrate that. But the inference of these steps is warranted after careful evaluation of these steps. Then we can agree and we can agree objectively about these steps, and then it's a valid argument, and it's not a threat. And it's a threat, and it's not a fallacy. So it's valid to talk about these things. And what we've seen in China as a possible like end state, it's not an imaginary situation. We can easily get there if there are different steps to happen. And for this part of the talk, I wanted to create like this thought experiment, like how this slippery surveillance slope would look like. Well, that's a tongue twister. So there are 6 steps that I've identified, and we are going to look at them and how they happen in different countries now. So first, that data about citizens is abundant. I think this is a given in most areas of the world now, both in the state and on the corporate side, and the sharing on these two ends. And then the second step on the slope is targeted surveillance, and easy and normalized. So hacking into people's accounts, giving a lot of legal space for that, getting around different legal protections, getting stuff without obtaining warrants. So we will see an example in the next part, and example from Hungary, where I'm from. And so this is the next step I've identified. And the third one is that the state increases the scope without any kind of pushback. So after this targeted surveillance is easy and normalized, and we can see there is no oversight. There's a lot of dodging questions, and there is more data points, and there is more information to be had. They start to build these systems. So I think in some of the states, we definitely know about the Snowden revelations. It's happened already there. China is definitely there. In the EU, I think some of the countries are moving into this direction, as we are going to explore a little bit later. So this is the third step. This is moving into this dragnet and mass surveillance, and using that for different purposes. And then the fourth step is very important here, is the interventions due to political need. So when there is like this loosening grip on power, or that there is this challenge from civil society, from journalists, there is this part where this data is actually getting used. So, and then as a fifth step, you can become the subject of surveillance. At the first step, only the journalists and only the opposition party members and people of interest in that kind of groups. But then, it's very easy to say that, like, okay, so we don't want any kind of gay propaganda going on here. There are some voices, sounding that in different parts of the world, like in Hungary. So it's very easy to move to that direction. Like we need to create this list, and we need to survey more and more people. And at the sixth step, you can be discriminated. Your rights can be denied, and you can end up in confinement or worse, depending on the legal protections that you have, or how much your state want to honor them. So going back to this normalizing surveillance part, I think it's very instructive, like what happened in Hungary about the Pegasus scandal. If you haven't heard about that, Pegasus is a spyware. It can be installed on phone. It's pretty costly, and it's very targeted. And in Hungary, we had this leak where it involved many other countries as well, not just Hungary. But in Hungary, there were at least 100 people on this list. And in some cases, at least 10 cases, it was demonstrated that these phones have been hacked. But on the list, there was opposition politicians, lawyers, investigative journalists, and this whole thing came out in July, and there were no clear answers. There is no admittance, like who have done this, why they have done this, why it was a good idea. There was always just obfuscation. And finally, yesterday, after a couple of months, the Hungarian government have admitted it. Yes, we have purchased this software, but still, the line is that we have done everything legally. yeah, of course. I mean, the laws are written in a way to help states like ours get away with this kind of surveillance and normalize this surveillance, and they can use this for their own ends and goals, to get that grip on power and sustain that power. And very interesting line from yesterday is that the government official who were like announcing this for journalists said it's okay because tech giants do more spying than the state. And he went on to talk about like how low moaner ads follow their friends around and stuff like that. Well, of course, that's a valid point in itself, but not when you want to escape accountability and like hide your own actions. It's moving this whole conversation away from that. So so just thinking a little bit about giving you an overview about what's happening with the adoption of these technologies. That's the next section I want to talk about. It's important to note that many countries, China especially, but even some of the European surveillance tech is getting exported into other countries. China, that's, if you put it in your favorite search engine, which is, I really hope it's not Google, China surveillance technology plus a country, you can play this game, and many countries will end up with some reports on like China trying to push their surveillance tech to them. Ecuador, Chile, and many African countries cooperate with them, and they use this to legitimize their whole reasoning. It works here, it will work for you. Look at all this success, and they want to make money off of it, of course, and this whole technological dominance. So I think this, but this is not the end of the story. I mean, in most of the EU countries, we have some cooperation with the Chinese, but I think it's getting a little bit more like a hot topic. So some of the states are pulling back. But in terms of like cooperating with companies like Clearview AI or Palantir that I've talked about, there is a lot of things going on. So like in the EU, Palantir is partnered with Europol, French intelligence services, Danish National Police, and other countries. And like the Dutch authorities have revealed that they are holding more than 45,000 documents relating to Palantir and their cooperation, but they don't show these. And Danish police have refused freedom of information requests on these documents. Europol reportedly have 69 documents, but they refused access to almost all of them on the grounds of like public security. So you can see there is this obfuscation going on in these areas as well. And one other like crazy story about Clearview AI and these facial recognition databases is from Finland. Like BuzzFeed, a journalist went and explored these leaks about who is using Clearview AI and who's testing it. And Swedish police have tested it. France Ministry of Interior have tested it, and they went to a Finnish government official and asked them, okay, so have you used it? Because we have some conflicting reports here. And the Finnish official said, like, we don't know what Clearview AI is. But then after this conversation, they researched it and have started testing it. So so this is the downside of awareness, I guess. So moving on, and thinking about these adoptions and putting it a little bit into like this long-term and historical perspective, and this longer-term trajectory. I would like to show you this framework by Carlota Perez, a scholar who is researching technological revolutions, and this is about this technology surge cycle. And she says that there are two phases of these revolutions: the installation period and the deployment period. And these general purpose technologies, last time it happened with the car and oil and mass production in the early 20th century. There is this first phase where there is this rapid testing and creative destruction, and new paradigms come in, and there is a cultural shift. Industries collapse, loss of jobs, wealth inequality, and there is usually a financial bubble. And this creates a lot of disillusionment. This creates a lot of chaos. And then, in the last time this happened, there were these wars, and like Hitler happened. So I'm not saying that's going to happen again. But what Ms. Perez is saying right now, she have explored this in the current context, with the computer and information technology, energy, clean energy revolution, nanotech and biotech. She argues that we are somewhat halfway there. So we had some bubbles now, and we had some crises, like 2 bigger crises in the past 20 years. But she says that we are still in this turning point. And why it's important in this context is because it brings a lot of disillusioned people, and it creates a lot of upheaval, and this creates an opening for messianic type of authoritarian leaders, just like it happens in the 30s, who come in and offer a direction, offer a solution. I will tell you and I will help you, to make sense of this world. And my argument here is that surveillance helps them a great deal, to create this kind of stability and order. And we can argue, if you look at what's happening in China, they're already in this synergy phase. There was enormous growth based on all these technologies in the past 10 years. And it came together with the rapid deployment of surveillance. So this golden age that comes with this deployment period, just like it happened after the wars, it might come with ubiquitous surveillance for us. So weaving it all together, I think we are in this moment where it's ripe for this rapid and wide adoption of surveillance technologies. And if you think about this long-term trajectory, there could be new capabilities and really hockey stick growth of adoption, like we see with other technologies. And I think we are not at the point of this sci-fi all-seeing guy. Everyone is monitored all the time in real time, but it's possible, and we can really get there. It might take 5 years, 10 years. It might happen in China first, but if there is success there, which can be emulated, it's without legislation, without awareness, without pushback from people like us. There might be more progress towards that area. So yeah, so all this makes me want to make a couple of points. The first is like autocratic states love surveillance, or will love surveillance. They benefit a lot from these technologies and the framing of like the security and betterment of societies. And I would expect to see more of this against like the others, like migrants, subversive elements, and this whole security incentives and like this whole national security drum can be beaten and say that like we want to will sway the public opinion towards this surveillance being a good thing for you. And the next question for me is, who can push the button tomorrow? Who are going to be the future rulers? Yuval Harari, writer and thinker, recently noted that perhaps a future autocrat is going to be an Instagram star and not a Bond villain. They will use these technologies in a very methodical way. They will know all the ins and outs, and also they will know a lot about branding and propaganda. And who will be their advisors? Who will make these kind of decisions? I think these questions are not asked enough. And right now we are in this phase where there is this whale of fake accountability and leader knows best rhetoric of one-party states. This is creeping into our democracies. And the question is also comes like, what is lost? And I think the open societies, right to self-determination, freedom to experiment, and human rights equally to all, and religious freedoms, these are all under attack. And I think in liberal democracies, these values are given and often fought for. And privacy helps these values, but surveillance has a chilling effect on them. And I think there is this whole question is a defining topic in our lives, and like a push away from these can support increased surveillance, strengthening autocratic systems, and help new autocrats come into power who will be harder to challenge. And the last question before we are wrapping up: who benefits? This hunger from information and more data and creation of more data points is kind of endless now because of its value. It has been demonstrated and tested, for this power. And the trust in governments and corporations are eroding. All the measurements and all the survey shows that. And to rebuild that, if you want to rebuild that, we need to have awareness and oversight and transparency and accountability from state and corporations. And there has to be some sort of a real democratic process to decide from citizens and customers, not just a black box and like obfuscating everything in the name of security. So ultimately, if you want to answer the question of this of the title of the talk, I think you have to decide. Now you have some view, you have some frameworks, and you had some ideas about my thinking about this, but you have to decide for yourself: how deep is this slippery slope? Where does it lead? How far we are on it? You might disagree with some of my conclusions, but what I know is that without these checks and balances and the ability and willingness to understand and oppose these changes, we are going to get pushed down on these slopes by others. So I have a short plea to you. If you agree with me about these values and these questions and threats, please don't work on surveillance technologies and these capabilities to deploy them for control and creating these power imbalances. Palantir is looking for a lot of people in a lot of European countries. So that's something that I would argue for you and others to not take that step. But maybe we'll end up with the Finnish Clearview example, and someone will start working for Palantir after this. I hope that's not going to happen. So what you can do instead is working on giving power to the people, and like with building on encryption and privacy preserving software, activism, education, and together we can envision new models of governance and new business models. And since you are here at MatomoCamp and watching this talk, you might already do some of this work, and I really applaud you. And I would like to, ask you to keep doing that. I'm more than happy to help you and be a partner in that. And together we can support the public to conduct their affairs in private, communicate in private, and do all this without undue and unjust surveillance. So before we part, I would like to finish with the other end of this quote from Malvin Kranzberg that we have started with. He says that technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. Many of our technology-related problems arise because of the unforeseen consequences when apparently benign technologies are employed on a massive scale. Hence, many technical applications that seemed a boon to mankind when first introduced become threats when their use becomes widespread. So thank you for your attention. I think we have something like 10 minutes for questions, but if there's no way of doing that, you can just email me at victor@ivpn.net. So I'm happy to talk about any of these topics and happy with research or anything else. So
I have shared some questions in the chat for you, Victor.
Okay. I'm just going to read them out loud then and try to answer them then. So life, like health and money, are often two big factors which are making people move. According to you, how it could be possible for citizens to feel more concerned about privacy? If I understand the question correctly, it's like perhaps that there are more important or more pressing things on people's lists than privacy. I think you can connect these topics to privacy, for example. So the health data is exploited as well, and states are sharing health data. For example, the NHS in UK is sharing health data with Palantir. So if we summarize my talk and its possible outcomes, and you connect it with these kind of issues of health and money, that's one way to get there. But of course, we have this Maslow hierarchy of needs to think about. So I think if someone really have like really pressing matters that would prevent them to think about these issues, and they don't have the options to switch to different other solutions like using other providers that are usually more costly. So I see that as a challenge. But if there is more awareness, there is more demand, there's going to be more solutions that are more private. So I think that's one way to get there. Second question: do you have any proof or leak or any other source of information showing that a GAFAM can track an individual along the websites, apps he's visiting? For example, being logged into Google account and being able to know that this user is visiting a given website thanks to tracker with GG funds. Well, I have to tell you that this is not my specific area of expertise. So I would have to get back on you on that about the technical details. But I don't think we need any leaks for this. There's actually third-party trackers. So for example, if you visit sites that have Google Analytics or like a Facebook Pixel, that immediately analyzes your persona based on different information like your IP address and like your screen size and different unique. There is this unique fingerprint, and that is passed on to Google, and that is passed on to Facebook, and then they are able to track you across sites. I think this is pretty well documented. So I hope I understand the question well. So yeah, this is happening. If you're concerned about this, you can use tracker blockers and perhaps a VPN and some other issues. But yeah, I don't want to promote any of the things that we are doing. So next question, like any websites, sources of information of reference that we can refer to in order to find back the technologies you mentioned about surveillance. Well, I think if you are looking for something specific, I think you should email me, and I can help you get back you with a couple of links. Well, my source of information, one is that there are many great technology writers, investigative journalists who really try to track this stuff down. And they publish in different, like in The Verge, Vice, and different other mainstream publications. And there are also independent bodies. So EDRI are a good resource in Europe for this. Privacy International, it's mostly concerned with Europe. And there are the similar organizations in the US to document this kind of stuff. So I think I would go to that kind of sources. Any ideas on how Pegasus got into the smartphones? Was it like installing a special Android app? Yeah, I think it's. I've listened to a discussion with a Hungarian journalist about this just recently. So the Pegasus malware is based on so-called zero-day exploits. So they work with hackers and like coders who try to find exploits in the operating systems which have not been discovered before. So, for example, they could manage to do like an installation methodology where they send just a link to someone on WhatsApp. So, for example, for investigative journalists, here is an interesting leak about something that's happening in my country, and there is a link. And if you follow that link, you don't have to do anything. It just uses your this exploit in your phone and this vulnerability in your phone to restart the system and jailbreak it, which means that there is like a change in the whole operating system. And after that, they immediately take care of that phone. And there was like another thing that was discovered that they didn't even have to click any links. I think it was through Skype or some sort of video call technology. If you had that app running in the background, they could send requests through that app. And no links, you wouldn't have to do anything. If you are sleeping and that happens on your phone, they were immediately installed. So this is the scariest thing about that you might not have to do anything wrong for this. Yeah. And the last question: how to fight crime while protecting the integrity of people? Yeah, this is the biggest question. At least for me, this is the one I grapple with the most, like the ethical and moral implications. I think this could warrant a talk in itself. Maybe it's a good idea for next talk. I will think about it. I think there are ways to do all this kind of like crime fighting without going into surveillance or limiting it to very specific needs. So I think this is a scale. And on that scale, we are moving into the areas where a lot of like rights to freedom and freedom of association and stuff that I talked about are really encroached on now. And this is all done with the obfuscation. So I think we can tone it down a little bit and move back a couple of steps. And I think warranted targeted surveillance on people that are proven to be a threat, and they have to be investigated, even like the child pornography and the terrorist stuff. So I think that should be done. I'm not arguing against any type of surveillance, but what is done with the increase in that scope, that creates a dragnet where everyone can become a suspect, and you can become a suspect, and it creates this kind of open door where people will use it for other means. So I think this crime fighting can be done, maybe not as efficiently as right now, maybe a couple of % less efficient, but this freedom protections and these right protections, that's not going to increase with the 10%. It's going to increase manifold. So I think it's trade-off, and I think it should be discussed, because many people perhaps disagree with me, but there is a lot of methodologies available already to police, the good old-fashioned policing that can be done. And these tools that we are deploying now, so like the encryption for everyone should use Signal, I think, for communications, just for these reasons that I've told you about. But I think that this is kind of like a utility that is available to everyone and should be available to everyone. So and utilities like the roads and the water and everything else, that's also available to criminals. And it's, you cannot say that like people who are suspects or people who might do some crime in the future, they cannot use our roads. How do you scan against that? So I think this is an interesting discussion. As I said, I'm just exploring these topics. These are all the thoughts that I had for now. So, but I'm really happy to continue conversation about this via email, because I'm really interested in this topic as well. So yeah, I think it's 45 now. Yeah, thanks for all your questions and your attention. So
Many
enjoy the rest
thank
of the
you for
conference.
many thank you for this session, Victor. We were very happy to have you here.
Thank you for the facilitation, and yeah, have fun in the next couple of hours. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.